Hi, everybody, and welcome to the second episode of Now Playing the 916. We have Stephen Michael Martin here. He is a local drummer. He's just here to chat with us. First question. What bands have you covered for in the local scene specifically? I know you're a independent drummer.
Oh, tons. So I got my start, I think when I was 18. I signed my first contract with a record label. I don't know if it's technically Sacramento, they were closer to Shingle Springs, and started touring with a group for like 3 years with them. And then reached a point where I really just felt driven to branch out as far as different genres I could play, different artists I wanted to work with. Very bluntly, I didn't want to be owned anymore. I was at an age I didn't really know what signing a contract really meant. So from there, once I broke off from them, my first session gig ever as a studio drummer was with a band called Bri, BRI. I don't know if she does anything in music anymore, but that was my first way of kind of proving I could extend beyond just one label and whatever they assigned me to do. From there I got hired as a session drummer with Jim Leslie, which according to him, he's won a couple Grammys from when he was a songwriter for Stevie Ray Vaughan. From there, I met CMA award winner Steve Luster. I started performing with him. Around that time, I got in recording beats with one of the largest hip hop record labels in Sacramento. They were called Knockdown Music. And through them, so Knockdown Music was a record label out of Sacramento. As far as I know, I think they emphasized mostly like signing rappers. But when I first met the CEO long time ago, he told me very quickly like, "Oh, we record all genres of music. It's mostly artists that are on our roster." So from there, through my contact with them, I got introduced to the Track Shack Studios, which is also in Sacramento, and I started recording beats with Peter DeLeon, who is to this day one of the most impressive audio engineers I've ever gotten to work with in the Sacramento scene. After him, I started touring full time with the Ghost Town Rebellion. They had an interesting mix of I want to say we called their genre grit rock because they would play like high end and punk, but they would also incorporate like banjo and lap steel and trumpet and a lot of more Americana instruments that you typically hear in like high energy rock. From there, after touring with them for 3.5 years, I got a deal to start touring with Ashley Barron, who at the time she was from Sacramento. She was probably the first artist I ever worked with that after doing one show with her, I thought this girl is going to be a superstar. 110%. And once COVID shut everything down during that global pandemic, she ended up moving to Nashville, Tennessee, where she lives now. So that's kind of the rough timeline of how I got my start and everything I did up until the pandemic. As we know, once 2020 hit, musicians weren't allowed to do anything besides sit in the house and wait for the world to open back up.
Just gathering from that, how long has it been since you've been?
Oh, I started at 7 and I just turned 31 last month. So it's been 24 years and I was in a highly active music family. So it wasn't really like I got my first drum set and I just practiced in my bedroom. That was part of it. But upon getting my first drum set, one of the very first things my dad did was he took it to the church and basically was like going to the church drummer. And so before I even really knew how to play, I was on stage every week, learning their sheet music that they gave to me, doing rehearsals, doing performances in front of people. So it was like before I even knew how to get started, I had already gotten started as a performer. And then middle school, it was very much the same. Lots of concerts and competitions, everything from symphonic music to like music I was was doing through the studio that I took lessons from. High school, it just exploded where I had a double zero period and a first period that was all music. So I had basically already done 2 or 3 hours of music before most people even got to school. And so every day after school, it was rehearsals. Every weekend, it was concerts and competitions. And then I was always working on my own music, things that I was writing and recording and producing on my own time, as well as also like playing in a variety of different bands. So by the time I was a teenager, it was just all music all the time. So once I reached adulthood and broke into the industry, it wasn't any new for me to constantly work all the time, whether it's sessions or recordings or going on tour or promoting a new album. Or I was already used to that constant high adrenaline grind of always working on music because that's what I had done all through my teenage years.
And with all that music involved, both family, church, and through school, how did you set yourself on the drums? I know most people usually end up with the flute, the clarinet, the bass, the guitar, the piano, but it seems like drumming is kind of few and far between.
Oh, yeah, most parents, I think, typically avoid wanting their kids to play drums just because it's thought of as such a loud, aggressive instrument. And so, yeah, the parents who choose like clarinet or flute or piccolo or even maybe violin, those are typically the smarter ones because you're not going to have this loud, assertive volume just sort of ringing throughout the house when your kid goes to practice. There's really two parts to the answer. The first one is, I think, drums. That's what was introduced to me very, very early in life. My brother was a drummer, so I always saw him behind the drums. He had a setup in our bedroom and he had a garage, and I have like almost no memories of him other than just playing drums and playing music and being in bands. So I think because I was introduced to it so early, it's almost like I didn't find it, it found me of like, oh, I could do this as well. But going beyond that, once I reached like middle school, I realized I wanted to play an instrument that people thought were cool. And I had friends in symphonic band that like would play the bassoon or the oboe. And I would think like, yeah, but girls aren't gonna like you if you're playing the oboe. But if you were playing, see, that was in the age, music has changed a lot since we were young children. But I came from the age where like being a rock star was the epitome of fame and fortune. So everyone seemed to sort of reach towards that. Like if you played guitar or bass or you sang or you played drums, the idea was you were going to be a rock star. Now we're living in a new era of music where like rock stars don't really exist nearly to the capacity that they used to when we were growing up in the MTV era. But back then, that was the idea of like, oh, I'm going to play an instrument that everyone thinks is cool. So I played drums.
Moving on from there, continuing a bit with, the past, was there any specific artists that you took inspiration from? Obviously, you probably took a lot from your brother, but is there anybody, from a large rock band, I guess kind of jazz or funk?
So that's a good question. Because it's changed and developed so much throughout the years. I originally grew up as a jazz drummer. I want to say like from age 8 to about 17. I would listen to like the old school jazz CDs, Dave Brubeck Quartet, Miles Davis, John Coltrane, and I listened to those drummers. And I thought what they were doing was very interesting because it was always very intricate and complex. But I don't know how many of them really like influenced my playing because even though I was raised as a jazz drummer, I was 100% a heavy metal and pop punk type of kid. In elementary school, I was always listening to like Good Charlotte and Simple Plan, but also like Mudvayne, Mushroom Head, Tool, bands like that. So there was an odd blend of like what I was told to play versus what I really enjoyed listening to. And I think the first drummer I ever saw who really blew my mind and made me think, okay, I think he has paved the path for me and I'm kind of finding my own voice as a drummer, was actually many, many years later, after all of these videos I had watched of different drummers and different bands, different performances. I remember so vividly the first time I ever saw Michael Jackson's drummer, Jonathan Sugarfoot Moffett. And so much of what he was playing, it wasn't crazy complex like a lot of the jazz drummers I had watched. And it wasn't like super straightforward like a lot of the punk I had grown up listening to. But this guy had a way of redefining the meaning of playing iconic masterpieces with strong, consistent pocket and unbelievable dynamics. He had this way of playing with strength and power. It sounded like he was taking unbelievably complex things and making them very simple. I think he was the first one who really made me think, like, not only does this inspire my playing, but it made me realize the path I wanted to take, where I wanted to focus a lot more on that strong, powerful, dynamic pocket and not so much on so much of what I was raised to play, which was incredibly intricate, technical jazz type of stuff. Because as sad as it is to say, there's not really a market for jazz music anymore. I mean, I wish there was, but it's becoming a lost art that most people typically don't listen to, and a lot of the newer generation doesn't even know that it's a style that exists anymore. It's sad to see.
Yeah, it's definitely I find myself listening to jazz every once in a while, but every time that I turn it
Mhm.
on my Spotify or something,
Mhm.
it tends to be older stuff from like the 60s or the 70s. I definitely can see it becoming a sort of lost art, but a little bit with that, I can kind of see an influence within funk. I mean, obviously, I can see an influence within funk from the jazz scene. Granted, funk is kind of not the most popular anymore, even though hip hop takes a lot of influence from funk as well. Moving on from that, you are a cover artist, at least according to your Instagram, and you have a pretty decent following. But what are some of the bigger people that you've done recordings with or helped with, possibly either writing or just playing for them?
Oh, it's such an extensive list at this point. The truth is, I love recording with just about anyone who is happy to have drums on their songs. A few names that really have stood out throughout my, I think it's been 13 years now in the industry. First and foremost, Robert Honablu and his producer Tatiana. They have a studio in Gold River, California, called SAC Academy. And I originally met Robert, I think it was like through a Craigslist ad. He wanted to like record someone at his new studio before he had this major giant studio that he has now in Gold River. And I responded to it. I said, "Hey, I'm working on like a gothic rock track. I just need to record drums for it. If you'd be interested in that, I'm happy to come by." And then I met him, and it turns out this guy is a 70-time platinum audio engineer. He has recorded every A-lister I've ever heard of. Led Zeppelin, Paul McCartney, Tupac, Simon and Garfunkel, Aretha Franklin, Bob Marley, The Doors. I mean, he has a divine understanding of the music business and how to properly work with artists in the studio. And being able to meet him when I did was it was just by chance. I didn't know him. I didn't know about his track record, and we did that one recording, and I was thoroughly impressed with working with him. He was obviously someone who knew exactly what he was doing. And then we didn't hear from each other for like years. We just got busy. He started designing and building his new studio, and that was that. And then, sure enough, I think sometime just last year, a producer got in contact with me and he said, "I have these two new songs. We have studio time booked. I really don't want anyone to lose on it except you. I said, okay, just let me know when and where. He said, we're going to be recording with Robert Honablu. And I said, I know Robert. I love Robert. I can't believe that he and I are going to reconnect after all this time. So when I went to his studio, I said, I don't know if you remember me, but we actually recorded together at a different studio like 4 years ago. And he immediately smiled and he said, Steven? I said, yeah. And so since then, we've been consistently doing sessions at his studio, Gold River. For the longest time, he has been at the top of my list as far as just overwhelmingly impressive professionals that I've been lucky enough to work with. Michael Rosen. I recorded with Michael Rosen a handful of times at his studio, East Bay Recorders in Berkeley. And same type of thing. I'll admit, when I first heard he was going to produce a new collection of singles that I was working on with a band I was touring with, I wasn't previously familiar with him. And then we got to his studio and he has these like multi-platinum records on his wall. And I'm looking at them, and we have Papa Roach, and we have Journey, we have Santana, we have, I think Green Day was one of them, Huey Lewis and the News, Tesla was another one. And I thought like, oh, okay, so we're working with like a real time producer. And what I loved about him is his overall demeanor is pretty calm, but he balances that by working really fast and talking really fast. And so we would be doing a song, I'd be submerged into this beat I was doing, and he would immediately cut it, and I'd hear him in my headphones, and he'd say, yeah, I wasn't feeling that fill. Play something sexier. And I say, something sexier? And he's, yeah, play something sexier. And this is a very realistic example of the life of a studio musician. Most producers and audio engineers, they don't know the correct terminology that you're expecting them to use in regards to the instrument you're playing. And most of the time, there's not time for them to get into the finer details. I often tell people we're in a business of just reading other people's minds. They don't quite know what they want, but they need you to provide it in a matter of seconds. And so we ran the song again. We came to that part, and I played, I'm guessing, a much sexier fill because he didn't cut the track that time. Okay, that was good. Let's move on to the next thing. But Michael Rosen will always be at the top. If I can name one more who actually is a descendant from working with Michael Rosen, I did do one song and music video that was written and produced by Frank Hannon, the guitarist from Tesla. He has an amazing studio, I believe, somewhere up in Northern California. It's been a while since I've been up there. But he also recorded with Michael Rosen as well when Tesla was pumping out hits. And what I loved about Frank is he was kind of the opposite of Michael Rosen. He was very calm, very peaceful, but he would sit there on the couch and he would listen as we're going through pre-production of the song, and he would cut it and he'd say, okay, do that thing during this part. Okay, we'll try it that way. And he'd cut it again. What if we put a little more power on this part of the bass guitar? And then we'd try it out that way. And my favorite moment working with Frank Hannon was, again, as a producer, he probably doesn't know the correct terminology of what a drummer would do. He just knows what he hears in his head. And so he's sitting on the couch and he says, after that guitar solo, we have about one measure. We really need to fill it up and make it big. And he looks at me and he says, do that thing John Bonham does. And I say, that thing John Bonham does? John Bonham did a lot of things. And so without even thinking, I just did the very first thing that came to mind. And I played these big, beefy triplets where I was just slamming every note into the drum going around the toms. And it's the only time I saw Frank get really loud because he stood up and he just yelled, yes! I did something right. Those would probably be my top three. Robert Honablu, and I can't leave out Tatiana, his producer, who's an absolute genius, as well as Michael Rosen and Frank Hannon. All of them absolute brilliant masters of their crafts. Every second I get to work with them is an absolute blessing.
And going kind of with that, do you know who it is that you are? Well, obviously, I feel like you probably would. You know who you're recording a song for, correct?
In most cases, yeah. I have a collection of but I have had a collection of experiences where when I go in to record, I don't know any of the people I'm recording with. We haven't sat down or rehearsed together. Um, it's more like they send me the song and then it's like, can you write and arrange a part to this and maybe come in as early as tomorrow? In which case I'm like, yeah, I can do that. But it's most of the time, yeah, I like to know the person in advance to recording with them so I have a much better idea of how they play, their overall style, and their overall vibe so I can match that accordingly.
Do you have a favorite genre that you tend to like to either cover or record for?
100%.
Pop?
Yeah, which is weird because as I grew up, I really started to take drumming seriously. Pop was the enemy in my household. We listened to heavy metal and we listened to hard rock and we would look at the pop stars of like the late 90s and the early 2000s and they weren't us, you know. And then something shifted right towards the end of high school. I was 17 and I'm trying to think of the first song I ever heard that really made like, oh my god. But it was 2012, so that's when Nicki Minaj and Drake and LMFAO were all dominating the charts. And now that I think about it, I think it was Party Rock Anthem
Oh
by
my gosh.
LMFAO, if anyone remembers that song. That band, they released like two of the greatest songs of all time and then just disappeared. But I think I heard Party Rock Anthem and there was something about that. I don't know if it's a synthesizer part or electric piano. I'm not a keyboardist, so I don't, but hearing that intro, it was like a cosmic burst happened in my brain. And I was like, this is what I'm all about right now. And overnight, after years of like never even paying attention to pop, I started going deep and I started listening to all of the pop artists. And even now, if I have my choice, if I'm going to play a sold out show or I'm going to play drums on a new album, I have a divine love and passion for pop and like party dance music. There's again, it comes back to having that really strong, powerful pocket. I don't need to show people all the flashy, crazy, wild things I can do. But if I can get everyone in the club dancing and like just pulsing to a strong beat, I feel like I've done my job.
So, with that newfound love for the sort of EDM scene, dance scene, have you ever thought about, going into kind of DJing, or have you done any work for any DJs to make like a beat?
I was thinking about doing that today because it seems like that's where so many musicians are headed. One of my favorite YouTube drummers, Christina Shiano, I noticed last time I looked at her channel, she seems to be diving into that. She's doing like live looping and like kind of things that are a little bit more away from the drum set, but still very creatively musical. And then another one I saw recently that I was like, I had no idea she was a DJ, was Blue de Tiger. I've always known her as a bass player. And then I saw the festival thing she was doing, and she's sitting there like behind the turntables. And then another one, Frank Zummo from Sum 41. When I looked into his tour schedule, like he's an absolute monster of a drummer, but I never realized he packs his schedule super tight with DJing as well. So I have a few things on the horizon. I just need to find the time to master. I was thinking today, if I start learning like audio mixing and mastering, that would probably fine tune my ears to a much bigger degree. So I could really hear the finer details of what's going on in music instead of just hearing the outside of like what's happening rhythmically and melodically and all of that. But DJing, I think, would be super fun. Whether I went on tour with a DJ and just played beats along with him, which I have done before, or if I just like learned sampling and like mixing and mashups and all of that, that seems like a super fun craft that there seems to be more and more of a demand for that, especially in like the club scenes, the rave scenes. I would be the ones who were in the clubs sitting there like behind the turntables and doing that.
We covered your favorite genre, we covered what you would like to do when it comes to EDM and stuff like that. But when it comes to your normal stuff that you post on your Instagram, do you have a favorite cover or maybe do you have an original piece that you just absolutely love playing?
So the interesting thing I've learned is a lot of the more artsy songs that I've done, that I've covered on my channel and put it up on Instagram and all the other social platforms, the ones I feel really passionate about and I feel like this song is a masterpiece, work of art. Those are the ones that get almost no attention. And then the ones that I'm like, this is just for fun. It can go up or not, but it doesn't, it's not going to make or break my career. Those are the ones that just blow through the roof. I did one the other day. I'm getting really good at doing like the tiniest fragments of covers you could possibly imagine, which happened on accident. I did one, the first one I ever posted on my channel that I titled Shortest Cover Ever was 4 seconds. And then I woke up the next day and it got like 5 times the views that I was used to for all the other covers that I do. And now it's just kind of become a recurring thing. But I put one up the other day because I was thinking about Everybody Was Kung Fu Fighting.
Oh my
That was
gosh.
a number one single on 12 charts, right? And it sold 11 million copies worldwide. Do you know who the artist is? Everyone knows this song. No one knows the artist. And I put that up, didn't even think about it. Same type of thing. I'm watching the numbers like just go up every day on this 4 second cover. So my favorite covers that I've done that have gotten almost no attention at all, I did Smooth Operator by Sade, which is an absolute masterpiece of a song. There has never been and there will never be a singer like Sade. No one in the world has a voice that beautifully smooth. I get chills just thinking about how she sings. Another one I put up the other day, I wanted to ask my audience, what genre is this? So the title of the video was, What Genre Is This? And I covered Eyelids by Pavris. I like to think of that band as one of the few bands in the world that has no bad songs. To this day, I have never heard a single bad song by Pavris. The sad thing is, those are the covers I feel really passionate about. Those are the ones that like don't get any attention. Really, the views don't go up. It's more of like an artistic labor of love for me because these are songs I want to do. But then the ones that I'm just like, meh, yeah, I'll cover the first single by the Cash Me Outside girl. I did that one time. Numbers went through the roof. And I think I just titled the video like, remember when the Cash Me Outside girl became a singer? And it's not like I'm playing anything particularly complex or impressive. I'm just playing a beat that's on the song. But it's been a really interesting process noticing like the artistic ones I do that I'm really passionate about, those don't seem to trend at all. And then the like fun pieces of content I just put up and forget about, those are the ones that seem to go through the roof. I'm still trying to crack the code on why that is. Like, do people just hate effort or do they just like not want to hear music that's divine and universal and they just want like the little snippets of dopamine? I don't know. I'm still trying to figure out what people want and why people want the things that they want.
Yeah, it seems to always work out that way for people. You post something and you think that it's not going to really go anywhere, and all of a sudden it's just huge. I've heard that from, well, I've seen it on a couple of people's TikToks or YouTube videos. They'll say, "Oh, well, I just kind of threw this together. I didn't really think about it too much, and all of a sudden it's my biggest piece ever."
Mhm.
And I feel like maybe just having that loosey-goosey feel to it kinda helps out with making it, get a little bigger. Do you ever do, like, jam sessions where you just get together with a couple of friends and just, pump it out just for the funsies? And if you do, what entails a great jam session for you?
I I wish I could do more than I do. Um, The truth is, I do music 5 days a week. And I'm at a point where, like, if I could do it even more than that, I would. If that meant like recording songs with different artists on Saturdays and Sundays, or like booking shows and whatnot. But even when my schedule isn't terribly busy, I'm doing music 5 days a week. I do like to go to, since I'm close to Sacramento, I'll go up to historic Folsom, and they do a great like ultimate jam night on Sundays. Gregory Doan is usually the guy who runs it, and he's a fearless master on the guitar. He could get on stage with no other musicians and have everyone stunned and mesmerized by his playing for, an hour without even really having to try. Cindy Cox is another person who's often a part of it. And I like to hang out, get on stage, and do 2 or 3 songs, whether it's like rock or funk or blues or, pop. I wish I could do those things more. The truth is, like, throughout my 20s, yeah, I would do music 7 days a week. I would do recordings, and then I would jump on set for a music video, and then I would go do 4 or 5 shows in a week. Sometimes I would do shows like 3 in 2 days or 4 in 3 days. My current record, when I was on tour with the Ghost Town Rebellion, we as a band did 4 shows in 4 cities in under 24 hours.
Oh my
And
god.
someone actually, I don't know where it is to I don't know where it is to this day, but someone captured a picture of us at the end of all of that, and we all just silently walked into the parking lot and just like laid down on the ground because we were so far beyond shot. In my 20s, I could do that. No problem. Once I turned 30, 30 is a game changer because you're not a kid anymore. And I started to prioritize other things like my hearing, you know? I can't do live concerts 7 days a week without considering how it might damage my hearing. I have to be more and more careful as I get older. Your body just physically changes as you get older. When I toured full time playing heavy rock and punk music, it was a whole theatrical show. At the end of it, I would stand on top of, while I was still playing, standing on one foot, and then I would come down off the drums and just punch every cymbal to the point where I felt like I couldn't physically move. And then we'd do one more big build where I would basically push every part of the drum set over. And then I would collapse on stage faking a heart attack. I faked my own death on stage like 3 or 4 times a week without even thinking about it. That was part of the show. That's what I had to do. All of that, that's great in your 20s. At 30, I'm like, I can't fake my death on stage and pretend it's not going to, physically affect me the next day. In your 20s, you can get right up from that and then go do it again the next night. But I love the ultimate jam nights. I love networking with older musicians, newer musicians. I wish I could do it more than I can, but it's just been a matter of like getting older and prioritizing basic things like my health and my hearing, and putting myself in a position where on Sunday it's probably better if I like recharge my batteries so I can be 110% going into Monday through Friday when I have to do music every day again, rather than if I just push and grind and grind and grind and hustle and hustle and hustle. Yeah, I'll be doing more as a musician, but ironically, I'll also be doing less as a musician because I'm not going to be feeling 100%. I'm just going to be churning the wheel as it rusts, going through the motions instead of really having my heart and soul in it because my energy is at 100%.
The way that we met was through a TV show shoot, a very interesting TV show shoot.
What did you think of that?
It was very strange, audience. We met via a listing on I saw it on All Castings. I'm not sure where you found it.
Saw it in a Facebook group. That was it. Yeah.
Oh, you saw it on the Sacramento Actors Group?
And they provided like, oh, they provided like no details other than like, we're looking for furries and here's an email. I said, okay. And I emailed them. And even as I walked into it, I'm like, what the hell are we doing today?
I signed up via All Castings, and the All
Mhm.
Castings had a little more detail, but the way that they wrote it made it seem like it was a
Hey,
student film. And that's actually why I signed up for it because I'm like, oh, $100 for like a little student film, like heck yeah, and the costume is provided. I know a bit about furries. Like I've had friends that are furries before, so I'll hop onto it, and then I get an email on Monday asking, like, "Are you still available for this?" And I'm like, sure, I guess."
oh,
And she said, I
yeah.
asked her, I'm like, "Is this from All Casting?" Because she sent a text to my phone number, and she's like, "No, we posted it on the Sacramento Actors Group." And I was like, "Okay." So I check out the post on Sacramento Actors, and I'd already agreed to it. I'd already signed the forms, and I see a very popular reality TV show. And then we go into it, and they're like, "Oh, it's sort of a commercial thing for an app for dating furries."
Oh,
And it was, oh my gosh, it was very strange. It was extremely strange. My family says that I sold my soul for $100 because now everybody's gonna think I'm a furry.
wait until you get cast for a Hollywood movie with a six-figure budget, and then you meet with the director, and he says, "You know the scene where you are supposed to take a shit?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "I changed that in the script. Now you're having a threesome with a couple of your friends." And then your family sees that.
Oh no,
Just
that's horrible.
you didn't sell your soul for anything. I've done so many scenes for movies that have made me wonder, is this going to come back somehow? Is this something I'm going to have to explain later on? Like, it's in the script. It's what the director told me to do. I was just an actor trying to make money.
With that, how do you find the balance between the music 5 days a week and then the acting? Because obviously you probably have a little easier of a time doing scheduling compared to somebody with like a 9 to 5. So how do you balance, doing all the music and then doing the acting? I know you mentioned you fly or drive down to LA pretty consistently, and I'm sure that's also wearing on your body just
Yeah.
like the drumming is.
Yeah. It's really easy to balance all of it when you have no kids and no spouse and no pets, because I basically set up my life to not really have responsibilities outside of career stuff. So when I mean, really good example. When I first got my foot in the door in LA, I became really good friends with, he's still a best friend of mine today, director, producer, and writer Joe Bartone. And sure enough, after we did one film in LA, he recommended me to, I believe, the casting agent for a movie called I Am Gitmo. Not really the type of work I typically do. This was more like a political war drama. And he basically said, like, well, here's an acting job for you, right? But at that time, I had already finished a project in LA. I went home. I was at the gym in Natomas, and I get a call from this casting agent. And she says, can you be on set for a 12-hour day of filming tomorrow, starting at 7 a.m.?
Oh my gosh, that's
And
horrible.
keep in mind, it was like still kind of during the pandemic. So I'm thinking, if I say no, what else am I going to do? Sit at home waiting for the phone to ring? The phone just rang. I have the gig. I just have to travel 6.5 hours. So I told her, yeah, I can do it. Left the gym, went home, grabbed my bag just so I could go to LA. I think I slept in their parking lot in my car, got on set, did 12 hours of filming. If I wasn't in the position I'm in with very limited responsibilities, you can't do that. If you have two or three kids at home, you can't drop everything so you can go act in a movie for a couple days. But I'm at a point right now where I'm like, yeah, I kind of enjoy being on call. I like getting the last minute texts, sometimes from never even met, who are like, hey, we have this song. Our drummer has COVID. Can you come in tomorrow and record this track for us. Yeah, send me the MP3 and I'll have it ready to go in an hour and I'll see you guys then. It's nice to not have the responsibilities so I can balance these things. I am in awe of like the Hollywood A-listers who don't have that kind of freedom and still manage to absolutely crush it. I just finished reading Tina Fey's memoir, Bossy Pants. And that woman is like a master of everything. But she's also like a wife and a mother. And she, like drives the kids to school and like makes lunches for them. And then she goes and she stars and produces in 30 Rock, probably 12 to 14 hours a day. Those are the people that I'm like, this is beyond phenomenal, and you deserve all the credit the world can give you. Because me, I'm just a guy who like lives by himself, you know? If something comes up, yeah, I'm happy to do it because I was probably sitting at home watching reruns of Seinfeld anyway. But who knows? In the future, it might not be that way. So I often tell myself it's very important to be thankful for the circumstances I'm in right now in life, because I often think I might one day look back to right where I am and be like, man, that was the best. I only had me to worry about. I only had to make this amount of money every month. And then everything else, I love yesterday. I slept in as late as I wanted because it was Saturday. I didn't have anything on the books. I woke up, I made breakfast, and I thought, I'm just going to sit in the cafe and read and drink espresso for as long as I want. That was my whole day. I sat there and I read Insight, The Psychology of Self-Awareness, which was a book recommended to me by one of my longtime mentors, David Ferguson. And I drank a $9 coffee from Starbucks. That was it. I love that because I know in the future life might not be like that. You know, I might be one of those people who's working 350 days out of the year and I don't have this kind of freedom. So I'm thankful to have this freedom to basically balance things very comfortably and peacefully on a daily basis.
So, kind of with that, going off of the you being on call, it seems like people reach out to you, whether or not you know them. So, you're not part of a label, you're not part of like you don't have a manager. So, how do you get these connections? How do you get these gigs?
A huge part of it is just consistently expanding the network, right? Because if I have a good standing relationship with a record label or a recording studio, it's not like I just have a relationship with the owner, right? I have relationships with the people he or she worked with. And then those people will typically refer me to the people that they work with. So it's kind of an ever expanding thing. Yeah, on a personal and professional basis, it really just comes down to who knows me. And in that case, they can refer me to the people who will potentially need me for the type of work that we all do. Um, and the other thing is joining Facebook groups where you just have immediate personal contact with people who might need whatever you do, right? In my case, it's like if you need a drummer, yeah, I'll respond to your post that says you need a drummer. I will say this much, and I don't feel as guilty about saying this because last time I went to the NAMM Convention Center in Anaheim, I was asking other drummers the same question. The big question is always, how do you get gigs? How do you meet more people? How do you get the next gig? And all of them told me the same thing that I already knew. But all of them said, Craigslist, man.
Oh my
Go
gosh.
on Craigslist once a day, type in my case, drummer, but for them it might be guitarist or songwriter or producer or recording studio. And you can find new contacts that way. This is the first year I've gotten in the habit of posting for myself on Craigslist because that's an easier way to get people to come to me rather than me reaching out to this guy and this band and this musician and this artist and this studio. So I have a template that I got from one of my online mentors, Matt Starr, he does Matt Starr coaching. The dude is an absolute genius. But I basically use the same template, and once a month I'll put it up on Craigslist, session drummer available. Hey, I've worked with Grammy Award winners, Emmy Award winners, CMA Award winners. Anything you need as a drummer, I'm happy to help. And just today, I mean, I got a message from someone I've never met who was like, hey, I checked out your resume. I have a few sessions coming up. Let me know your rates and hopefully we can get together, you know? And that's a new contact in my network. And then I'm probably going to be in contact with the people that he knows that he's already worked with. And then I might be in further contact with the people that they know. So it's kind of a snowball, but it really is just a matter of like letting go of the introverted social shyness and like being open to talking to new people, you know? Anywhere you go, there's someone that you can help and they can probably help you. So if you build that connection, it basically works well for everyone. Everyone gets to win.
For our last question, have any other tips or tricks for people either trying to break into independent music, and I mean independent music as in like doing what you do as a independent person without a band, or do you have any tips or tricks for anybody in the audience who happens to want to be an actor?
Oh, for musicians, get off your phone and go out and meet people. It's that simple. Because everyone everywhere is focusing on their branding and their fan building and all of that, you know, building their following on social media, creating content, posting content. All of that is great. All of that is important. But none of the people you're quote unquote friends with on Facebook or the people you follow on Instagram, none of that is going to be nearly as valuable as maintaining real friendships and relationships with real people in real life. And you're probably not going to get that by staring at your phone. So whether it's like weekly jam sessions at venues that hold those types of events, or like, you know, coffee shop meetups with people, and most people are not as scary as you would think if you just reach out to them and you just tell them the truth, like, hey, I'm a musician, I see you're doing this kinds of stuff, you obviously have something figured out that I don't. I'd love to meet up with you and buy you a cup of coffee and just, you know, get a better idea of how all of this works. I did that recently with Emily Retzess, who I mean, talking to her is like walking through a gold mine of information. And she's very peaceful and she's happy to tell you everything she knows. But that's how it started. Was I saw she posted in Facebook groups like, hey, I just did Taylor Swift's Eras tour and I've been on Saturday Night Live and I've toured with Phoebe Bridgers as her bassist, and I'm offering one-on-one sessions for people who want to take bass lessons, right? All it was like a post she was putting up in Facebook groups, and so I added her and I just reached out to her and I was like, "Hey, you just did this like mega tour that everyone is talking about. You've obviously done a lot of successful things. I'm curious to know more about your story and how you do what you do." And we set up a Zoom call, and I think we ended up talking for like an hour and a half, you know. And now she's someone that I can recommend to people in my network. And yeah, it's really just about talking to new people. And when you sense any red flags, that's okay, right? Because not everyone is supposed to be in your network. Trust your gut. If someone feels shady or like they've got some bad ulterior motives, you can just see to it that they're not in your network. I've met tons of people across the years where I'm just like, okay, the universe is telling me not to work with this person. The universe is setting me up to not work with this person because of however they are, and that's okay, right? And the opposite is also true. If you meet really good people, down to earth, honest, helpful, sincere, genuine, authentic, interesting, and they're there to uplift and hopefully motivate you and support you and encourage you, that's someone you want to have in your network. Maintain a friendship with them. As far as movies and acting, I think it's really the same thing, you know. Be in the beginning, take the opportunities you can. It's, you know, it be an extra on a film set. There's no shame in that. Be a production assistant on a film set. There's no shame in that. And in doing that, you're going to immediately put yourself in the network of a cast and crew of who knows, 30 or 40 or 50 people. Those are all people you can build relationships with. And if you're an overall good person, then they're going to remember that and be, oh, yeah, I worked with this PA one time and they were interested in that. Let me put you in contact with them and see if they're busy or if they could use this type of gig. You never know. It's really all of it is about people and finding ways that you can help them, uplift them, and contribute value to their lives. And that's something I wish I had learned much earlier in my career. But it was actually taught to me by Damian Keyes. And he told me once, quite some time ago, your job is to contribute value to others, right? In that case, it doesn't matter if you're an actor or a musician or a producer or a filmmaker, whatever you do, if you can find ways to contribute value to others, people are going to remember that and people are going to keep you in their network and you can keep them in your network and then everyone wins. Everyone gets to succeed together. But I wish more people who are coming up in the world, whether it's in music or in movies or anything else, if they just understood the golden rule that it really all comes down to how much value can you genuinely contribute to people's lives, you're probably going to be very successful. Yeah, there will be people who take advantage of it. And that's just, often what happens in this industry. I have a million horror stories of working with the wrong people who just ended up either stealing from me or using me or anything like that. But there's also the opposite side of it of people who saw my work ethic and people who saw what I could do for them very early on. And they gave me a chance, and I keep it in my heart to this day. They didn't have to give me a chance. They didn't have to bless me with this opportunity, but they did anyways. So I'm going to give that back to them tenfold for years and years and years and years. I'm still doing things on a daily basis to give back to people who gave me opportunities when I really didn't have anything going on and on. And that's where you get a really true, genuine friendship and relationship when you have that kind of dynamic with the right people.
Awesome. Well, it was great talking to you, Stephen. It's great to hear all the that networking really is as simple as just picking up a conversation with someone while you are pretending to be a furry on a TV show.
Yeah,
If you would like to see me and Steven, I was told that I believe it's Love After Lockdown. I'm like 90% sure that's what the show is. Love After Lockdown, our episode should be airing sometime in May.
I don't think that's the name of the show because I looked into
You
it.
don't think that it's Love After Lockdown?
What I thought the show was when we got cast for it, but I looked into the show and I think what it is the lady who was producing the show that we're on was one of the producers for Love After Lockdown. I think that's her claim to fame, but I don't think that's the show we're on. I think they just use that for the marketability of this show. So I've been trying to figure out what the name of the show that we're going to be on is, and I haven't been able to find any info. She followed up with me one time and just said like, "Oh, it will probably be out in like this many months." And then I didn't hear anything else. So but we might we might be watching MTV or HBO or one of the Netflix. We might just be watching a show one day and we'll see both of us as furries. Who knows?
Well, thanks again for being on the show. Thanks for being my second episode. If you, audience, or somebody that you know would like to be hosted on the show, just send us a message on Now Playing the 916 on Instagram, for our YouTube, where you're probably watching this because this is the only place that I'm posting to at the moment. But you can also send an email to nowplayingthe916 at gmail.com. Again, that was Stephen Michael Martin, local drummer as well as actor. You can find him on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Stephen Martin Official. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode, and until next time.